So thank you very much, all of you, for being here. I know people have come from far and wide, and we certainly appreciate it. I guess I should start off by introducing myself. My name is Wanda Bedard. I'm the president of the 60 Million Girls Foundation. A lot of you, of course, we've had the chance to meet. Some has been simply through Skype meetings or just by email. We really want this to be a networking event. I think it's a great opportunity for people. We have people who are working in the field, people on the tech side, content side. This is a really great opportunity for everybody to talk to one another, and we hope you'll be able to continue the conversations after today as well. We do have guests, as you saw in the biographies, coming from all over the place. We have a lot of Canadian members, of course, so from Vancouver and Calgary, Toronto, Ottawa, of course, Montreal, and we have some American organizations here as well. People have come up from Boston and New York and Kentucky and Seattle. So just wanted to give a brief introduction to 60 Million Girls, as I said, for those of you who are not familiar with us. So we were founded in 2006. Since then, we've invested $2.8 million in girls' education projects, 24 different projects in 17 countries, directly supporting over 25,000 children with these investments. We are a completely volunteer-run organization, and we keep our administration costs at less than 1%. It's actually at almost less than 0.5%, I think, now. So we are known to be very cheap, and that's why we keep asking people to support us in so many different ways. We have a rather unique position. We are, of course, a funder, so we do fundraise, but we've also learned an awful lot through the work with our partners in the field. Over the years, we do field visits. I go to the field myself about every second year at my own expense, sometimes with other members of the foundation. And I like to go, obviously, to see our projects, but also at the same time to look and visit other partners or potential partners and see what's going on there, just to do some benchmarking, to be able to compare how we're doing. Obviously, as funders, what's most interesting to us, of course, is to be able to have the greatest impact possible for the money that we are raising. Everybody works very hard for the money. Our donors work very hard for theirs, and so we want to make sure that it works as hard as it possibly can. We're also on the advisory board at McGill's Institute for Studies in International Development, which gives us, again, another very interesting perspective of what's going on in the field of international development. We have our research and development team that we set up in 2012, around 6 years ago. And the mandate of this team of ours is strictly to scour the world and find the best practices in girls' education. So we'll talk a little bit more about the R&D team afterwards. The way we function is we go out, we make a call for proposals every fall to Canadian registered charities, so Canadian NGOs, and have them submit to us what they believe are their most impactful and most effective girls' education programs. And then we, as a committee, make a decision on which projects we're going to support. And we support projects in $100,000 increments, usually $100,000 for 1 year, but sometimes we go up to $300,000 over a 2-year period. We also follow many different initiatives around the world. We follow UIS, so UNESCO Institute for Statistics. It's actually located here in Montreal very closely, to see what's going on in the world. And things have evolved a lot, even from the beginning in 2006 to where we are today. I guess one of the biggest things that we've noticed over the years, of course, with the previous Millennium Development Goals, the emphasis was very much on access to school, so really getting children into school. Around 2012, things seemed to taper off in terms of investments in education around the world. And what started to really come out very clearly was the fact that, yes, we were getting more children into school, but the kids that were there were simply not learning at the level that they should be. So that was one of the reasons why we started the research and development team at that time, because we saw that, yes, we were investing in really great programs with our partners, and we were getting, a lot of it was focused towards access, but what the real problem seemed to be was, once the kids are in school, are they learning at the level that they should be? And we really believe that there's great work being done around the world, and we were right. And that was one of the reasons for setting up the R&D team, really to scour the world and try to find those gems of projects and ideas that were being done in other countries that we weren't aware of, because we were really limiting ourselves to what a rather small number of Canadian partners were doing in the field. And of course, one of the statistics that was very, very sad to see in terms of girls' education, some of the statistics from UIS, was that if the world continued to fund girls' education at the rate that we were doing up to that point, it would take another 100 years before all girls had access even to junior high school. So we figured 100 years is a little bit too long to wait, so maybe there's a better solution somewhere. And we've had the chance in many of our past projects to see our funding do more than actually just fund that particular project. We did a really interesting project with WUSC on 2 different occasions in the refugee camps in Kenya and in Malawi. It was remedial classes for girls to enable them to complete elementary school and get onto high school. And as we know, with girls, being able to provide them with that transition and getting them to continue into high school is extremely important. So it was a fairly new project for WUSC, and we funded it the first time for $100,000, and then 2 years later again. The project had so much success that it attracted funding from the UK government, and they funded the project for 5 years for $20 million. So that's the type of success story that we like to hear, that our small investment can really have a lot of impact, and it can be leveraged to bring in more funding and to funding over a longer time. We've had other cases with other partners where our funding showed that a new concept or a pilot project was so interesting that sometimes then the government would take over the funding themselves. So ultimately, we would like to be out of business, right? We just want to help start those conversations and start those projects out there. And we've been really, really fortunate over the years to develop some great relationships with our partners. A number of them, we've worked with them on a number of different projects, and we really feel that we're real partners with them. Obviously, they've got the experience in the field, but they share a lot with us, which allows us to learn. When we're in the field ourselves, they really open up their doors and their projects to us. And it gives us that opportunity to grow as funders as well. Again, as I mentioned earlier, we want our money to be the most effective it can possibly be. And in the last couple of years, because of the work that we started doing with finally developed the Mobile Learning Lab, we've also had the opportunity to have some great relationship with some new tech partners. And I just want to state this straight out at the very beginning, I am not a tech person. So anything that we're showing you is something that I can do, so if I can do it, that's our level of understanding that anybody can take it and run with it, so it's not that complicated. And that's really why we planned this showcase event today. As I said, we're constantly looking at how can we do better, how can we help the situation and tackle these issues in an even more effective way. And we've got to the point with the development of the Mobile Learning Lab, which is having really great success, and we're getting requests from all kinds of different NGOs around the world for it. And we're just wondering, what is the next step for us? How do we continue doing that? What direction should we go? And we really wanted to have this opportunity to bring in the field representatives, so all the different partners in the field, but also people who are developing content and on the tech side as well, to really see what is the best way forward, to see how it can be integrated in any number of projects. Obviously, we're very committed to education and girls' education in particular, but we know that we've seen that this is being used in a whole bunch of other areas as well in terms of health and agriculture and so on. So we think this is a really, really rich opportunity to get everybody here together and really share this knowledge today, and at the end of the day, talk about it and see where the next synergies are going to lie. So I'd like to start now and talk a little bit more specifically about the Mobile Learning Lab. It really started in 2013 with a trip I made to Sierra Leone with some of the other members of 60 Million Girls. And I was there to visit a project that we were doing at that time. We were funding CAUSE Canada. So CAUSE is based out of Sierra Leone. And what we were doing is we were funding a program called the Peer Literacy Facilitators. So we were providing funding to high school girls to be able to continue high school. providing fees and uniforms and so on. But what was really particularly nice about this program is that in return, the girls had to give back to the community. So after school, 4 days a week, so Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, these high school girls would go to a local elementary school for 1 hour at the end of the day and basically help the younger students with reading and writing. So it had a twofold impact, of course. It would help the kids with their literacy, which was really important, but also these high school girls became role models for the younger girls there. As I say, one of the things that we're constantly trying to do is make sure that kids continue on to school. And to see these high school girls be able to go on was a really strong message to them. So while I was there, as I mentioned, as I do whenever I visit in the field, I thought, well, we'll go see some other projects and other things that are going on. And we decided to do a little pen pal project. So a couple of teachers heard that I was going to Sierra Leone, and they go, oh, it would be really interesting if our students could have a better understanding of what life is like for those kids in Sierra Leone. So in particular, there was a high school class in junior high school, and each of the students had a little sheet of paper and wrote out their story and pasted some pictures on it and so on. And so we were to go to Sierra Leone and hand it over to some students there and ask them to write back their story in return. So that's what I did. So we went to a local high school and we worked with some kids in grade 5 and grade 6. These are the pen pal letters that were given to them. And so we gave them time to read them, and we gave them some paper and some pencils because they don't have a lot of school supplies, and asked them to write something back. And we collected all these papers, and at the end of the day, we went back to the room, and of course I was curious to see what these children were writing, and I was really totally shocked by what we had received. In Sierra Leone, the kids, their mother tongue is not English, but school is in English from grade 1. So these kids were in grade 5, grade 6, and in junior high school, and they were barely able to write a complete sentence in English. Sometimes we had 2 lines back from someone. Other kids were able to write a little bit more, but they certainly weren't fluent in English, and which they should have been at that point in time. And so you look at that, and first of all, I found it really heartbreaking. You know how much parents give up to make sure their kids can go to school in the hopes that that's going to break the cycle of poverty in their community. And so they're doing everything they can to make sure the kids are there, paying for the uniforms and the test fees and so on. And the kids are there, but they're not learning at even close to the level that they should be. And it's really heartbreaking too, because we put all this emphasis on getting kids into school, and yet, as I say, they're just not learning nearly close to where they should be. And so we came back from that and thought, we have to do more. And again, some of the research that we had done, we had been starting to see different ideas and different perspectives out there. And everything kind of gelled when I had the chance to visit the Integrated Research and Learning Center that CAUSE had set up. The Learning Center is basically a room. It doesn't have windows, it has a floor and it has a roof. And CAUSE had put some notebook computers there. There's no electricity in this part of northern Sierra Leone. So there's a generator which is quite noisy, and they charge up the notebooks in that way. And the high school girls had the opportunity to go to this center on the weekend, so that was another perk for them. And there was a supervisor there, somebody who knew a little bit about computers, and the girls would learn Word and Excel and PowerPoint. So on Word, for example, while we were there, they were learning to underline words and bold them and so on. And so we were looking at that, and the girls loved being on the computers, and we thought, wow, that's really good. But these girls never have a chance to use these computers in their classes. There's no printers. They don't do their homework on them. While it was really good to have these skills, we didn't see how practical it was. And you know how much more a computer can do other than just being a word processor. And that's when the idea first came in, because we had been looking at a lot of different research that was being done, in particular Sugata Mitra with the self-directed learning, and then also Khan Academy for the math tutorials. And we thought maybe this is somewhere we should be going. This particular slide really confirmed some of the statistics that we were seeing. We're talking about the youth literacy rate in the population of 15 to 24. You see in the darker colored ones, you see mostly sub-Saharan Africa, of course, it's less than 50%. And as I say, it's when you see it in the field and you actually can tangibly understand these situations that it becomes really, really clear. Again, it's from UNESCO. It's the proportion of children and adolescents that don't meet the minimum proficiency levels in math and in reading. So if you look in the low-income countries, which is the first column, reading at the primary age, 91% of children don't meet the minimum proficiency level. And it basically is the same for math and then even at lower secondary age. If you go on to, of course, the high-income countries, you can see the drastic difference between the two. This slide is the pupil-teacher ratio. So again, you look at sub-Saharan Africa in particular, and you see class sizes of 40 students to 1. I can tell you that's, I think, an underestimate. I'm sure Wendy will abide by that too. This is a class, so I was last in Kabbalah, so in northern Sierra Leone in November 2016. This is a grade 1 class. It's actually supposed to be 2 classes. I don't know if you can see the divider there. Bamboo sticks that are kind of in between the middle of the room. There's supposed to be 2 teachers, but there's only 1 teacher there that day. There's 144 kids in the classroom. So if anybody has any teaching background, you know that that's a few too many kids, especially for grade 1 kids, to be able to teach them properly. It's very difficult to get supplies, and in particular books and school teaching aids, out to very rural areas. We were going from Kabbalah, which is the main town, to some outside villages, and sometimes they were only 8 to 10 kilometers away, but it could take you an hour or 2 hours to get there. The roads are that bad, and we're not even talking about the rainy season. It's a really difficult situation in a lot of these rural areas where you don't have, first of all, enough teachers, and you don't have enough qualified teachers, and you don't have the school supplies, and you don't have the textbooks, up-to-date textbooks that you need. And this is where the work that we did on the research and development side came in. So some of you may be familiar with Dr. Sugata Mitra. There's great TED Talks on the work that he's done. He was based in India, and he was actually working in Delhi, and his office happened to be right next door to a slum, literally right next door. There was just a metal fence that was separating them. And he was really interested to understand how they might develop more employees in tech, because there was a great shortage at the time. And he kept looking over the fence and saw all these kids in the slum areas and said, you know, I wonder if there's some way that we can help develop tech skills in these children. So he cut a hole in this corrugated fence, and he embedded a computer into it that was connected to the internet and had an integrated mouse. And he just put it in there, and he didn't tell the kids about it or anything, and just watched what would happen. And of course, kids are very curious, so a first child came up to the computer and took a look at it, didn't know how to use it, as we all do, started touching different buttons and so on, and eventually was able to start surfing the internet. A second child comes by, a third child, and they help them out. There's peer learning going on, and he was totally amazed at what these kids were able to do in a very short period of time. And then he started replicating that. He wanted to see how far he could go with that. I won't go through the whole detail, but he did different research projects over a 10-year period and really developed the concept of what we call self-directed learning, or minimally invasive education. And that really struck us because, again, one of the big problems that we have in these communities is you don't have enough teachers who are properly trained. And so if we could provide something to the children that they could use on their own, you'd give them that head start right away without having to wait and try to find teachers and then try to do all the teacher training as well. The next component that we found, we had heard a lot about Khan Academy. So Khan Academy is a math tutorial program, and it's grown tremendously and basically used by students. I think they get something like 1 million hits a day, used by students around the world at all different levels. So it's a series of videos, about 10 or 15 minutes, on very discrete, particular math topics ranging from grade 1 math all the way up to university level math. And students can go onto it on the web and take a look at any video of a particular area of math that they're having trouble with. Look at the video. Nice thing about video, as opposed to having a tutor or somebody beside you trying to teach you a concept, is you can replay it and replay it and replay it. And you don't have someone there saying, don't you get it yet? Don't you understand what you're learning? And after they've looked at the video, then there are exercises that they can do, and they can tell right away if they're catching the concept or not. So there's, I'm guessing, and the people from Learning Equality will certainly correct me, but there's probably 3,000 to 4,000 videos just on the math component. So as I was in Sierra Leone and we were seeing what was going on and the difficulties with the kids, not mastering their English and so on, and these high school girls working on the computers but just learning Word and Excel and PowerPoint, the thought came to us is, well, what if they had access to something like Khan Academy? Now, of course, the other problem in Sierra Leone, beyond not having electricity, is they don't have access to the internet. So we thought, okay, well, we did know that Khan Academy, an offline version had been developed called KA Lite. So what we decided to do is, once I was back in Montreal, we downloaded KA Lite onto USB sticks, and we sent them over to our partner in Sierra Leone. And we told them, however, to insert the USB sticks into the computers, but don't tell the girls what was there. We were trying to see if the self-directed learning module could actually work. So our partner, Cause Canada, was a little taken aback at first and said, no, let's just try it. We have nothing to lose. So they received the USB sticks, and on the weekend they put them into the notebooks. And the girls were curious and wondering what was going on. And they didn't tell them anything at all. And of course, the girls were really frustrated at first because they were used to having someone really dictate and tell them each step of the way what to do. But as we've seen over and over again, you play with the computer, you touch different buttons, and lo and behold, within 20 minutes or a half an hour, the first girl manages to get onto Khan Academy and is totally blown away by what she sees in these videos. And of course, as soon as one student has access to it, then the other students very quickly learn what she's done, and they have access to it as well. And it was so popular with the girls, they just loved it. And I do have to mention that there weren't enough computers for all of the girls, so they were usually 2 or 3 to a computer working on this. So anyways, the first day went really, really well. So the girls go to this learning center on the Saturday and Sunday. They came back the next day. And then the following weekend, there was actually a lineup at the learning center before it even opened, because the girls wanted to be the first ones to get on the computer and to have the computer to themselves. So we got this feedback, and we were really surprised. We were hoping it would have a positive impact, but we really didn't know too much what it would be. And the girls continued to use it, and after a couple of weeks, they started asking for more content. Just having access to the math wasn't enough anymore. They wanted information about business and different topics that they're doing in school. And at the same time, we found that there was a problem as well, technically, with using the USB sticks, because they would sometimes not operate properly on the notebooks, or as the girls were walking between them, they would be hit, and so on. I have a tendency to talk to a lot of people, and I'm very passionate about girls' education. And I happened to be speaking to someone here in Montreal who was doing his PhD in neurology and happened to be from Nepal. And some people connected us, and we were talking, and I was saying, oh yeah, we just started using KA Lite in Sierra Leone. He goes, oh, I've been using it in Nepal. And I go, really, how is it working for you and everything? I said, we're having problems. We've been downloading it on these USB sticks and it doesn't work too well. He goes, well, I'm using a Raspberry Pi. And I'm going, a Raspberry Pi? I have no idea what you're talking about. And I'll show you what a Raspberry Pi looks like. It's this little device here. So as I found out later, and again, excuse me if my technical explanation is not quite correct. It's basically a computer, but it doesn't have a keyboard and it doesn't have a screen. So it's a motherboard. So it's really the content of the computer. So I thought, wow, that's really cool. How do we find these Raspberry Pis and how do they work? They just basically sit in the room and you can connect devices to them wirelessly. And then that's when he told me about an organization called World Possible. So I contacted World Possible and said, can we get some of these Raspberry Pis and ship them out to Sierra Leone? And they said, fine, no problem. I said, KA Lite is on there. And they go, yeah, no problem, it's on there. So I said, great. So we bought 2, sent it to Sierra Leone, and did the same thing again. We told our partner, place them in the room, don't tell the girls how to use it. And this time they had to be able to learn how to connect wirelessly to the Raspberry Pis. So again, a little bit of difficulty at first, but very quickly the girls managed to figure it out and connect it, and were able to connect to KA Lite. What we didn't know when we sent over the Raspberry Pis is that the content on there that was downloaded was not just KA Lite math, but there was KA Lite chemistry and biology and physics. And the girls found that out. And it was our partner in the field who came back and told us, the girls are working on cell division and all kinds of different videos. Where did that come from? And to us, that was a great aha moment, because we realized again that the girls on their own in a self-directed manner were able to get much more out of this than we would have even been able to tell them about. So once we sent over the Raspberry Pi, so the Rachel Raspberry Pi, then we started wondering, well, what do we do next? We didn't really have any major plan or goals in place. We were just trying these things. And then we thought, well, let's see if this worked well with these high school girls, but they were also very highly motivated, and they had been in different programs and they'd had different kinds of training. We wondered, would younger kids be able to use it as well? So we set up a smaller pilot project. We had grade 5 students from a number of different schools in the Kabbalah area. We had them come to the Learning Center 1 day a week for 2 hours, and gave them access to Khan Academy, the math. So we limited it only to the math for them. And we measured their math scores before, and we measured their math scores after. We let them work on it, I think it was about 12 or 14 weeks. And we did see a marked improvement in their math scores, and it wasn't a big research paper or anything like that. It was just a small pilot project, but we gained a lot of information from that, namely that the kids loved it. They just really enjoyed having access to the computers. It made them feel great. Oh, we have this. It's nice stuff. People had heard about computers but never actually had them or used them themselves. And they kept coming to the program regularly, week after week. And again, you have to remember the condition that these kids are living in. It's extreme poverty. A lot of those kids only get 1 meal a day. It's extremely hot and it's very humid, and they often had to walk even up to a half an hour to get to the learning center, but they showed up every single week. So we did that, and then we were trying to decide, okay, well, we know that even with younger kids it can work, what do we do next? And then, like all things that happen in developing countries, a major crisis hit, and it was Ebola. So in the spring and summer of 2014, Ebola was there, devastating as you know, and in September the government closed all the schools. They didn't want a lot of people to congregate, of course, in the same area amid all the chaos and everything that was going on. So basically put everything that we were doing on pause. But one thing, again, I have to say about Cause, Bev was there and she just felt devastated that the kids didn't have access to school, and the schools were actually closed for almost a complete school year. And she thought, well, why don't we take these computers, take the Rachel Pi, and go out to the communities. So the kids can't come to us, but we'll go to them. So the first week they went out, and there's 1 or 2 people there, and they started talking to the village chief, and they started showing KA Lite. People were really, really interested. And then they said, okay, we're coming back again next week, the same time, the same date. And then all of a sudden there was like 100 people congregating around. And then the following week there were up to 300 people. And the village chiefs were using KA Lite, and the parents were using it, and the kids, and it was a huge, huge success. So there again we had the proof that the kids are really interested in the technology, and they take to it very, very well. We wanted to really test the impact of self-directed learning on a much larger scale. So what we decided to do was to set up an evaluation project. So starting in 2015 and then in 2016, we worked very closely here with McGill University, Sonia Laszlo, who's the director of the Institute for Studies in International Development, to structure an evaluation project where we would be able to see the impact of self-directed learning with the Mobile Learning Lab on younger kids, and we chose kids in grade 4, 5, and 6. So we worked really hard for about a year and a half to set up the structure, but one thing that was extremely important to us as well was to find a component that touched on literacy, because it was really great to have the math and the science, but underlying everything, of course, if children can't read and write properly, then they're not going to get very far in any of the other subjects. And we eventually found an organization that had a program called Fantastic Phonics. They were based in Australia, and it was actually someone from Code Canada, Scott Walter, who gave us the link to that particular software. And we took a look at it, and we thought, wow, this is a really very user-friendly. Again, the criteria being, if I can use it, a child can use it. So it was really great. It was easy to connect to. And it was a series of small animations. And there was 40 different books, and it's all based on phonics. So the kids would listen to the video. It would play the little story the first time, then the second time the words would appear, and then the words get bolded as you go through. And then there's a number of different games that were available as well. And we thought, geez, this is really great. This is a super program. The only problem was that it was web-based. And again, not being a tech person, I said, well, how difficult can it be to make it offline? So we couldn't do it ourselves, but we were very fortunate to find a Montreal company by the name of Explorance. We didn't think it was a big project. We thought, maybe take a couple of weeks. It ended up taking about a year. The developers, I never even asked. I was too embarrassed to ask how many hours they put in, but there was a team of 4 developers working on it part-time over that whole period. And not only that, but every time they had a version done, it had to be debugged. And I just look at some of the members of our R&D team, and we spent hours and hours listening to these animated videos over and over. We know our alphabet backwards and forwards. We estimate that it was probably about 1,000 hours of volunteer time as well to finally get the offline version. So it was great, and again, in tandem with World Possible, we asked them to put it on the Rachel. And so that really completed the whole program for us. We had really strong math and science, and we also had some great literacy software. And we were also, again, thanks to Code Canada and some other partners, able to put ebooks on there. And not only ebooks, but books that were written and illustrated by people in Sierra Leone. So it's just really, really important to the kids to have that context, to have something that they really, truly understand and can use. So all that to say that we were finally able to develop what we call the Mobile Learning Lab, which is basically this here. One of our members found a suitcase, I think at the local Walmart for 20 bucks. Went to Canadian Tire, and there's little foam inserts that we put into it. And then we place 7-inch tablets. We had decided to go to tablets simply because they're much less fragile than computers and laptops. We have a special protective coating on it so they don't get scratched. So we fit 30 tablets into one of these suitcases. We can fit the Rachel, so it's no longer the Raspberry Pi, but it's a larger device. And this new Rachel has a lot of advantages, and I won't steal your thunder, Nicole. I'll let you explain it all. But one of the greatest advances to it is that we can download up to 500 gigs of content. So that is a huge amount of content. So not only is it the KA Lite and math and science and the Fantastic Phonics and the books, you have Wikipedia, have information on agriculture, health, music, coding, all kinds of things. So it's really, really amazing. So those are the main components of the unit. And of course, we have to be able to charge them up. In Sierra Leone, as I said, there's no electricity, and it's very expensive to keep using generators. So again, with our great R&D team, we found a supplier of a solar charging system. So the company is called B-Box. You have the solar panel that goes on the roof of a building, for example. There's one wire that comes down to the battery. So in this scenario, we had 3 systems, so 3 solar panels, 3 batteries, and then it comes down to these discs. And the discs, as you see, have USB ports, so you can directly connect all the tablets, so it's really easy and fast to charge them up. You can charge up 30 of them with these 3 systems. When it was installed in Sierra Leone, it took about an hour just to put the panels up on the roof and then to connect them, so not a lot of technical know-how needed there as well. And so then we started preparing for the evaluation project. We had a whole protocol set up. We did literacy reviews. One thing that we were really interested in is, would we be able to impact non-cognitive skills? Because there's a couple of things that you can do when you're trying to improve learning outcomes. You can do it very directly and more directed by having the kids work on very specific things. But as I said, in this particular context, you don't have enough supervision, you don't have enough teachers, you don't have enough qualified teachers. So we were trying to do something that we could put directly in the kids' hands. We chose to go the route of providing lots and lots of content and really letting the kids choose what it is that they felt they needed most or were most interested in or wanted to learn about. And so we test for the math and literacy scores of the kids. So we have 750 kids in the evaluation project. We tested for the math and literacy scores last summer. They have 1 year to participate in the program. So they go once a week for 2 hours, and they have access to the tablets. And then we'll be remeasuring their math, literacy, and non-cognitive skills this summer, probably in July or August. But before we did all that, of course, we wanted to, again, test out the concept and see how it would work. So in November of 2016, so just about a year and a half ago, I was in Sierra Leone, brought the mobile learning lab on the plane with me, carried it over, and we decided to test it at the Learning Center in Kabbalah. So the Learning Center, again, as I said, is a very basic building. We invited 30 students, so 50-50 girls and boys, and they came from 4 different elementary schools, and so they were all grade 5 students. They had not been told ahead of time what was going to happen, what we were doing, or anything like that. They just came. The teachers came with them as well, and we told the teachers not to say anything, not to get involved. Then we set things up. So you see the Rachel here, and then the suitcase with all the tools. Just to show you the 30 tablets, they don't look really pristine. It's because that was a picture taken after with all the fingerprints of all the kids when they had finished using them. And you can see right away some kids jump on it. And of course, if you've never used a tablet, you don't even know how to turn it on. You don't know about swiping. So I mean, they were poking at it and doing all kinds of things. And it took less than a minute for one student to figure out how to turn it on. And of course, then they turned to their friends, and then it's like a wave. The whole class all of a sudden had all the tablets on. So we hadn't even finished handing them out, and they were already open. And then, of course, the next thing, as I say, you keep seeing them, they're poking, they're swiping, and then they figure out, oh, they can get on different things. I can tell you what was really, really popular was the camera at the very beginning. And everybody was taking pictures of everybody and posing, and I thought, oh my God, okay, well, that's what they're going to be doing for the next 2 hours. But that's not what happened. They got tired of that pretty fast. So the kids were really pretty quiet in the room, and as I said, they were from 4 different schools, so they weren't mixing too much, and they were slowly looking at it. And we saw pretty quickly that the class was getting more and more animated as time was going on. And what we really wanted to see was, would they be able to connect to the Rachel, so the Wi-Fi server? Again, they had no instructions how to do it, so it was almost by fluke if they connected with the right steps to be able to get to it. And then all of a sudden, you start seeing the kids getting more and more excited. They start talking to their friends. At one point, there was like 3 or 4 students together on this one little seat, and they were helping each other out and showing each other what they were doing. And what was really cool, I mean, they were dancing and they were really excited and they felt good about what they were able to do. And it took them about 15 minutes before the first student connected to the Wi-Fi server, and then we started hearing the music of Fantastic Phonics, and we heard the TED Talks going on, and the KA Light videos going on. And it was really, really touching, because even the cause staff who were with me, we had been talking about it for months and months, and I said, you know, it's going to be completely self-directed, you won't need to help them out. And I know people were really, really skeptical, and they go, you know, not helping the kids, not telling them, you know, these are valuable units, what's going to happen? And I said, let's just see. And I remember Samuel was there that day, and when we started hearing the sounds from K Light and Fantastic Phonics, we just both looked at each other and go, wow, this is totally amazing. We didn't think it would happen that fast, that they would be able to connect in that way. And they were going on from one thing to another. They loved the e-books. They all had different things that they were enjoying, and they kept showing each other, and it became more and more animated. And, you know, we had certain hopes, not quite expectations, but certain hopes of what would happen, and everything was realized in that time. It was really, really breathtaking, and it was amazing. After we let them work on the tablets for about 2 hours, and then we asked them to turn them off, which they figured out how to do as well, and we got all 30 tablets back, and nothing was broken, and nothing fell on the floor. And then we took a little bit of time just to ask the kids what they thought about it. And very open-ended questions, and you know, some would say, oh, you know, I love the camera, or I loved looking at the books, or I loved the videos. And one young boy, he got up and he said, I liked learning without being threatened. And I kind of was taken aback by that. And then Samuel was there, explained, well, you know, there's still corporal punishment going on in the classrooms. And the kids are often in class, and you know, they get caned, and they're expected not to say too much and just to listen to what's being told to them by the teacher. And all of a sudden they had this freedom to work on things that they really enjoyed and something that was meaningful to them. So it was really, really great. So it really validated the idea of the self-directed learning. We continued doing this with these same 30 students for about 12 weeks. Again, just to see would the kids keep coming back, because it was totally on a voluntary basis. And all the kids constantly showed up. Every once in a while they'd bring a friend or two and go, no, he was originally here. You go, well, we only have 30 tablets, so we didn't have 32 kids. But there was really a lot of enjoyment. And then we saw too, because we kept track of what was happening every week, that the kids started really diverging in what they were interested in. So, you know, some kids it was the math or the science, other kids it was the e-books. One child really liked the music program that was on there. So they were all doing different things, which again was really, really interesting to us, because that's what we wanted to have happen. So we will have results of the final test a little bit later this year once we analyze all the data. But I just want to touch again very briefly on the non-cognitive skills. Because again, we feel that if we can tap into the intrinsic motivation that kids have for learning, it'll also increase their self-confidence and their level of aspiration. So we've tested for those skills before. We're going to test them again after, and we do have 2 control groups. But we feel that if we can tap into those non-cognitive skills, that's what's going to get the kids to want to continue learning, to see it as a very positive experience rather than being in class and being threatened and having a very difficult environment there. And so if we can show that these non-cognitive skills are affected by the opportunity to go to the learning lab, we think that's going to have really great repercussions in the medium and long term. So these are grade 1 students, again, in Sierra Leone, and it's Feed the Monster. So the app is on this tablet. So that's also a literacy app. The kids, again, was completely self-directed. They figured out how to turn it on, and they started playing on it immediately and really, really loved it. So we don't think there's a bottom age that this can be done with. It really just depends on the type of content that you have. Obviously, some is geared for a little bit higher levels. So we learned a number of things, even though we haven't completed analyzing all the data that we have. The first one, of course, is that children really love using the tablets, and they teach themselves very quickly how to use them. And one thing I'd really like to throw out there is don't underestimate what kids can do, because so many people kept telling us, no, it won't be possible. Adults need to be there to really show these kids how to do things properly, but it's really not the case at all. We also realized that peer learning is a very, very important component here. It's because the kids were together with other kids around them, and one would learn something and show them, and they'd get really excited, and it would really egg them on to continue discovering different things on the tablets. The kids enjoy the freedom to learn. They work, as I mentioned, on different subjects depending on their area of interest. They keep coming back to have access to the content, so there's that continuity. Even after months and months, we thought they might get tired of it, might get bored, but it's really not been the case. All the content for this evaluation project is in English because the kids are learning in English at school. It includes TED Talks, the readers, the Feed the Monster app. But whether the student is looking or listening to any subject at all, we have the feeling that it's definitely going to impact their proficiency in English just because all the content is in English. The tablets have worked really well. There have been no breakdowns, and we've been using the first ones for a year and a half now. The protective coating, I think, was a really good thing to put on them as well. The B-Box solar charging system is easy to install and has worked very well. There's 16 systems in place right now, or 18. The Rachels are working well. They have kept up even in these harsh conditions. The community engagement work was really important to have done that before implementing the bigger evaluation project. So we have 750 kids. They're in 5 different communities. There was a lot of work went into choosing those communities. We wanted to have communities that had about the same socioeconomic indicators to be able to compare them a bit, as well as the 2 control groups. So it was really important to let the parents and the teachers and the whole community know what was going on. We didn't want them to be concerned or worried and then stop the program. We really wanted the children to have freedom to be able to go to the mobile learning lab every week. Of course, what it is that we want to know is the impact of the access to the mobile learning lab on the non-cognitive skills of intrinsic motivation, self-confidence, and level of aspiration, as well, of course, as the impact it can have on math and literacy. The questions we have are: how can we support girls to stay in school? How do we help learning and education become core pillars of the community? How can we improve proficiency levels in students? We feel if we can create a learning environment for children that is fun, free from violence, where they can learn things that are useful to them, then we believe that their intrinsic motivation will increase, they'll feel more confident in themselves, and their level of aspirations will increase as well. They'll be able to aspire to more because they'll be exposed to more, feeling that they have more control also of what they learn. You may be asking yourselves, what about the teachers and all this? We did choose to do this in an after-school program. We didn't go through the Ministry of Education simply because we felt it would be way too complicated to do that. Again, the teachers don't have, a lot of them don't have the level of training they need just to teach in the classic approach. To have started adding another layer of required knowledge of technology, we felt just would be too much. But we have found that the teachers are very interested in the content. You'll hear that from some of our different partners who've used it as well. This is a great resource for teachers, especially if you're not up to the level that you'd like to be in any different topic. You know, the K-Lite math tutorials are great for anyone. So there's been a lot of interest on the side of the teachers as well, and different projects that have been implemented to use that. And then, of course, if we look more globally and more in the medium and long term, this is something that doesn't need to be limited either just to students. You know, you think of the very high levels of illiteracy around the world, and yet parents still need access to good information. And you can imagine having a system like this where you have content in video format for maternal health, for prenatal health, for immunization, nutrition. There's so much great information that can be given to these to the mothers. You can have, there's all kinds of agricultural information as well. So it's really can be a center of a community in terms of information as well for everyone, and not just limited to the children. You know, that was one thing that certainly crossed our mind when the Ebola crisis was happening in Sierra Leone. It was so difficult in many cases in the rural areas to get the health information out to those people in time. And you had Westerners there with their big hazmat suits and basically scaring people a lot. You know, you could simply make videos with local people or even the village chiefs and have them on systems like this, and people can just keep watching the video over and over and over, and you can expand that out really, really quickly. The question that comes to us, and one of the reasons why we're here today, is what's next? As I'm talking to you about the system, I thought it might be important to give you some idea of the costs as well behind it. It is a really inexpensive system to implement. So one mobile learning lab is basically 30 tablets. That's what we chose to do. One Rachel Plus and the 3 solar charging systems, because that's what works well together. And we provide headphones. We recently sent a mobile learning lab to Tanzania, and the landed cost was about $6,000 US. Now, a big portion of that cost is the transport cost of the solar charging system. So if there's electricity, that's really great. It diminishes the cost by about half right away. We purchased here in Montreal Samsung tablets. We did get a discount on them, but again, we're not buying in great volume. But again, often people can get donated tablets, or you can use smartphones or laptops or whatever. So one mobile learning lab provides about 12,000 student hours per year of access. So that's 30 students, 2 hours a day times 5 days a week for about 40 weeks. You do need a coordinator, so you do need somebody to take the suitcase and bring it to wherever the class is going to be held, to take the tablets out, hand them out, make sure they're charged, and take them back at the end of the day. It's a part-time job for somebody locally in the community. For about $600 a year, a supervisor provides about 10 hours of supervision of the mobile learning lab per week. And so we looked at the operating cost. We need to replace possibly, to date it hasn't happened, but let's say 2 tablets a year if they break or dropped or are lost, and 3 new batteries every 2 years. So the batteries for the solar charging system last about 2 years. They're $50 each, so they're really not expensive. So a total cost of about $275 a year plus the coordinator. It comes out to about 7 cents per student hour. Again, that's low cost, very easy to implement, doesn't take a lot of planning or programming. Obviously, you have to have a place to hold the classes or the time for the mobile learning lab, but it can even be done outside. So really anywhere. For the project in Sierra Leone, there were some community centers that we were able to use at the end of the day for the students to go to. It could be an empty classroom or just any community part. So we do also believe that there might be a case for making this a micro-enterprise. We're always looking for ways for women to have revenue. It's something, again, very simple. It doesn't take someone with a lot of tech expertise to be able to use it and implement it. So that's, again, something that we're looking at as well. We've been getting a lot of requests in the last 6 months. I think there's 7 different NGOs who found us. We're not a big organization. People have contacted us as either through somebody talking to somebody else, or they've seen seen us on Facebook or looked at our website. And a number of these organizations, these are not organizations we fund, but they're really just looking for information of how do you implement it. We're very open source, so we've been sharing everything we're doing with everyone, putting them in contact with Nicole, with World Possible, and with B-Box and so on. But one of the things that we're finding is we're a little bit overwhelmed with the demand. We are a volunteer-run organization. Obviously, one of our main goals throughout the year is to do our fundraising, to be able to fund these great projects and then do the project evaluation and the R&D work. So it's really become very, very time-consuming. Is this something that we should spin off perhaps into a social enterprise, do things differently? Do we just continue it as it is? Because even though we have the recipe that we're willing to give people, we know it still takes a few more steps to get it implemented. And we'd really like to hear from you, and that's what we're hoping in the breakout sessions to see, do you see any potential use for this system in any of the programs that you might be using? And if you do see a use, what do you see as the potential constraints or the challenges to actually implement it and get it going. And with all that information, we're going to continue doing our brainstorming with our team and really see what are the next steps for us and how do we get this in the hands of even more children in the coming months. And I just want to have a little round of applause for these amazing volunteers. These women, they're mostly women and men, put in amazing amounts of time, put in all their passion and their enthusiasm. We have an amazing, amazing team. As the organization has about 20 really committed volunteers. I would not be able to manage all these volunteers if I had to keep telling them what to do. Basically, when something needs to be done, somebody says, okay, I'm going to look after it, I'm going to do it, and then I forget about it because I know it's going to be well done, it's going to be done on time, it's going to be done professionally, and that's how we've been able to move forward. So it really is a major, major team effort, and I hope you all have the time to keep sharing and keep talking. And if you have any questions about anything going on, these are the ladies and men to talk to today.